Sonic and Shadow Generations may be the greatest Sonic game ever. At first glance, this might sound like an insane statement. I mean, it seems like it could be a little bit premature, and maybe it is. However, there's a lot of gameplay that has surfaced, and a lot of evidence to believe that this could potentially be the case. There's been a lot of discourse on Twitter surrounding this game, and some people, after seeing the first showcase, were saying that the game looks exactly like Sonic Forces, which has had some fans concerned, and the discourse has been going back and forth on Twitter. But after seeing a lot more gameplay footage and seeing people actually play the game at Summer Games Fest, we're now starting to see that the level design for the game actually looks pretty good when you see some competent players actually play the game and actually using the boost button. And I've even changed my tune a little bit, and I've noticed some actually pretty decent level design. So is this going to be the best Sonic game ever? Well, let me give you my thoughts on what we've seen so far. But first, if you're a Sonic fan, make sure to subscribe to the channel with all notifications for daily Sonic videos. I'll give you a second. And let's dissect the gameplay a little bit further. First things first, let's talk about the most obvious thing. So the most obvious thing is that we're getting Sonic Generations packaged into this game, which maybe was a smart move on Sega's part. In particular, the fact that you can play Sonic Generations in 4K 60 FPS in the year 2024, especially on Nintendo systems, just making the game a little bit more accessible is a huge win. Now, as far as the visuals and the gameplay goes, it doesn't seem like there's anything that's too out of the ordinary. I don't know just how much work they put into the remaster. It doesn't really look that much different to me, but the game in of itself already has great art direction. It already looks really good. So while they're marketing it as a remaster with updated visuals, the game in of itself looks fine as it is. So I don't know exactly what they did differently as far as the visuals go, but at least it's not going to be a Sonic Colors Ultimate situation where they basically butchered everything. Let's also not forget that Sonic Generations is one of the highest rated 3D Sonic games ever, which basically rounds up to an 8 out of 10, and the user score is just as favorable with an 8.4 out of 10. Make no mistake, this is one of the most beloved 3D Sonic games of all time, and as far as like the gameplay goes, there's really very minimal flaws that you would expect from the typical Sonic game. You know, jankiness, bad camera, rushed deadlines, like none of that garbage exists within this game. It's super polished, probably the best controlling boost game out of them all. From a critical standpoint, you really cannot point out many flaws within this game. It gets just about every single thing right. So the fact that we're getting one of the most beloved 3D Sonic games in this by default means if you think Sonic Generations is the best Sonic game ever, this game already is the best Sonic game ever because it includes Generations in that. Coupled with the fact that the base game is going to include stuff like a Sonic Adventure Legacy skin, and then there's going to be a Terrio skin. I don't know if that's going to be for Shadow Generations or Sonic Generations or both or whatever the case may be, but there's also going to be bonus content included into the base generation. So you just added more to what some people already consider the greatest Sonic game of all time. By default, even without the Shadow portion, I mean, you could make that argument. They've also even added new abilities in Sonic Generations, such as the drop dash. Even modern Sonic as well as classic Sonic both have a drop dash in the game. Now, just little things like that. I mean, hey, look, it's extra content, it's extra stuff that's available to us. Making what some people consider the best Sonic game of all time, just having a little bit extra stuff on top of that only helps the game. And I feel like since Sonic's reputation has been restored within the gaming community over the last couple years, I feel like reviewers are going to be a little bit more favorable to this game this time around, just because like they know how beloved this game is amongst the Sonic community. I anticipate we're getting above an 8 out of 10 on Metacritic this time. Let's get into the things that people actually care about, which is the Shadow Generations portion. Now, we've seen a lot of improvement over the last couple of days because a lot more competent players have actually played the game. You know, the people that were showcasing it, even in the video that you're watching right now, like don't even know how to use the boost button, which is crazy. So when you talk about the Shadow portion of the gameplay, by the way, just look how great the presentation looks. By the way, the art style looks absolutely incredible for this game. I'm seeing a lot of great animation with the cutscenes and stuff like that. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but if you're looking at the game right now, the level design is definitely beating the Sonic Forces allegations. As you can see, there are tons of alternative paths and routes that you can take in order to help you get the best time. Being a high-skilled player and replaying the game actually rewards you. The level design is giving players a lot of freedom to do what they want. Now, it's not completely open like a Sonic Adventure or like a Frontiers or something like that when you talk about the open zone, but as far as linear gameplay goes, which is something that the Sonic franchise has always been accustomed to, like even SA2, one of the most beloved Sonic games ever, is also a linear game. So linearity is not necessarily the problem when you talk about a game. And while it's linear, it looks like it's giving you some different options to do, but one of the coolest things I find with this game is definitely the use of the ability. If you look right here on the screen, the Chaos Control is something that's going to be a factor within the game. Chaos Control is going to allow you to slow time to help you potentially find alternative routes and paths and ways to get through the level. As a matter of fact, if you look at this clip from Fidel Game Cage, you'll see that if he uses the Chaos Control, it's actually going to activate an alternative route for him to light speed dash. So it's just cool that it gives you the option to do different things within the level. Instead of going left right there, you can actually take this route right here, which presumably probably gets you through the level faster. So it's going to be fun to speedrun. It looks like Shadow's going to have a plethora of abilities available to him. Like we already saw Chaos Control. We also saw the Chaos Sphere. We also saw this wing power-up ability, so it's assumed that'll have some fun abilities to experiment with that'll actually probably lead to even more replayability and more creative ways to platform and get through the level. And just use the context clues in this picture. Shadow's using the winged ability in the Space Colony Arc level, so it's assumed that later on in the game you unlock these wings and you can go back and find new paths to find in old levels that you already played before, so that's going to boost replayability. Again, while the game is definitely linear based, which is kind of like how the boost games kind of work, if you look at rooms like this, it seems like it's wide open and there's a lot of different options for routes that you can take and places that you can explore. So it's not all linear, and it looks like there's going to be some choice that the players will have. So right off the bat, the Episode Shadow allegations are definitely being beaten. Episode Shadow was a DLC for Sonic Forces that included 3 new Shadow levels. And for the record, this DLC can literally be beaten in like 10 minutes. And the level design is really not that challenging. There's a lot of 2D sections and stuff like that. And then you look at the first level of Sonic and Shadow Generations, the first level, the tutorial stage, by the way. What we're looking at is presumably the tutorial stage because it seems to set the stage for the story. This in of itself is about 6 minutes. So the fact that the tutorial stage is longer than the entire Episode Shadow DLC is a really good sign for this game. Even when you look at this part right here for the level design, first of all, you have things that actually attack you, unlike Sonic Forces, but also you see these little slopes right here. If you boost off of them, it looks like the big word momentum is actually being used. Go off this dash panel, look at that. So it's cool to see that there's actually going to be some slopes that you can take advantage of that. I mean, everyone probably gets the biggest dopamine spike in a Sonic game when you use the slopes to increase your momentum to launch you forward. So it looks like it's got a little bit of everything. Even when you look at the Bio-Lizard boss battle, this looks like one of the better Sonic bosses we've ever seen. Honestly, let's be real here. Sonic boss gameplay usually isn't that good. Even some of the more beloved bosses in the franchise's history aren't that engaging for the boss battle, but when you look at this, it looks like everything is there. The spectacle is there. Look at the animations in these cutscenes, which I want to talk about as well. The animations in these cutscenes look way better than almost any animation we've seen in Sonic Frontiers. The animations in Sonic Frontiers are like super jank. They don't look that smooth. They don't look that fluid. They don't look that expressive. They look extremely stiff. And then you look at this game, like it's got a lot of flavor. It's got a lot of sauce. That's a big word that Sonic fans have been missing for a while. This game seems to have all that in terms of the art style. Even look at some of the victory pose animations. How much better is this animation than just about anything we've ever seen in the last couple years for the Sonic franchise? Look at the fluidity of Shadow's movement. This right here screams polished to me. When was the last time you could say that pre-release for a Sonic game there wasn't the usual jankiness garbage that you see? Like, compare this reveal to the initial reveal of Sonic Frontiers, where like the animations were all messed up, like people were talking about that. It looked very stiff. And then this, like, just look at the presentation. Like, it just looks absolutely incredible. It seems like, you know, since it's a shorter game, they have more time to polish it. I mean, based off of what we're seeing right here, it looks like they could release this game tomorrow. It does not look like it needs any more time in the oven, but the fact that we have 4 more months to truly make sure the game is as polished as it can possibly be is a great sign. Again, these animations look so fluid and smooth. They look so much better than anything we've ever seen in Sonic Frontiers. I don't know how they got so much better in such a short period of time, but you can see it right here. Let's not forget that this package is going to include an open zone hub world for Shadow to explore, and this is a brand new picture right here, which kind of depicts a little bit of what to expect, and it seems like we're going to be unlocking more and more of it as you go, if you look at like the purple stuff here. So being able to explore another open zone and kind of see what Sonic Team's philosophy is going forward, because open zone is the future of mainline Sonic, it's going to be cool to see all of this play out. So not only do we get new linear levels to play, but we also get a brand new open zone to explore, and I feel like we'll have a lot of fun with this because, as you guys know, Sonic Frontiers actually is one of my favorite Sonic games ever. According to people who have played the game as well, it seems like it's going to be playing more like cyberspace, and while some people don't like cyberspace in Sonic Frontiers, it's something that people criticize often, but I think the main reason why they criticize cyberspace in the first place is, one, due to the reused aesthetic themes. I mean, obviously people do not think it's visually appealing to see Green Hill retextured in this weird like space version with Chemical Plant, Sky Sanctuary, and like the city level. So basically the aesthetics of cyberspace aren't that great. Also, the controls for cyberspace are not that great. Now, the moveset for cyberspace is actually quite good in my opinion. Believe it or not, Sonic has a really good moveset in cyberspace. If you look, we have this little bounce attack right here, which is really good for precision platforming. Also, we have the double jump. We also have a really good air boost, which allows you to change your direction in midair. So if I jump over here, oops, I can actually correct it with the boost. Now, the only problem with Sonic Frontier Cyberspace is, one, the air controls for the actual jump. If you look, he moves around in 360 really slow right here. While you have the correction with the air boost, it would be nice if the movement was a little bit more fluid just by jumping in general. Also, when you're boosting, you'll notice that he can't really turn that well. Like, he turns basically like a slow moving car when you're trying to turn when boosting at max speed, which is completely different from how he controls in the open zone. So it's kind of baffling that he has different controls in open zone and cyberspace. So if they can actually fix these two major problems, which is the jumping turning and the boost turning, then we have a really good moveset, which in my opinion is basically like the perfect hybrid between the adventure and boost formula. I always looked at cyberspace not as as like a traditional boosting game, but more so as a boost adventure hybrid. If they don't fix the turning and air controls, that would be kind of a disappointment. But at the end of the day, the level design is really what comes down to if this type of stuff even gets in the way in the first place. You can definitely tell from the outset it's not going to play exactly like Sonic Generations, and it's going to have some of those adventure hybrid elements in it. But based off of what I'm seeing here for the first time in a long time, pre-release for a Sonic game, we're seeing something that actually has some polish behind it, and it also looks really good in terms of the level design as well. Could this potentially be the perfect hybrid between the boost and adventure formula, mixed in with some open zone gameplay that could potentially leave a lasting impression on the Sonic franchise? In addition to that, it looks like the story of the game is going to give hardcore Sonic fans exactly what they want by taking the character Shadow the Hedgehog seriously again and diving back into his lore. Just seeing the Sonic franchise be cool again and having basically unanimous excitement for the future release is such a good sign, and it's really a great time to be a Sonic fan in the current day and age. Compare this to how fractured and divided the Sonic fan base was when the first Sonic Frontiers gameplay reveal was released compared to what we're seeing now. I'm seeing polish, I'm seeing confidence, and I'm excited to see what they do with Sonic and Shadow Generations.